right, it looks like we're live. Hello, everyone. I am a self-published author by the name of James Craik. I write a bunch of stuff. And Publishers Weekly promoted an article from Dazed that apparently called me gay. Because, according to them, straight men don't read novels. And I'm a man. I read novels. They must be calling me gay. I brought on a guest here. Mr. Pritchard, do you read novels? Are you a man?
I do, and I guess I just found out. I just found out when this article came out that I'm gay too.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but I mean, you learn
miracles
stuff.
of the internet here.
Yeah, you learn stuff every day.
So I'm going to get into that article in a sec. First, I'm going to complain about my bad luck because disaster struck me yesterday. I was at work and I was doing what everyone does when they are working for pay, which is I went to the bathroom to kill time on my phone for a minute. And as I took my phone out of my pocket, I fumbled it and it slapped on the floor in a protected case. Boom, Thanos snapped, broken screen. Like not even a cracked screen, the actual connection between the screen and the processor snapped. So I could receive calls that I could answer with my headset because I had no touch screen. Could not send calls unless I was in my car and could send them through my car. And was deprived of the internet, of all the memes and networking and marketing and memes. Now going on 30 hours with no replacement phone yet. And I spent 2 hours at the phone store trying to file an insurance claim because the system sucked. And the guy that was trying to help me had the thickest accent I had ever encountered in my life. And I work in an international company, and that was the thickest accent I had ever heard. So I have been in purgatory. I have been suffering without my phone because I am addicted.
I get it. I have a similar story where when I was a kid, we were camping as a family. I went to the bathroom. I don't know, it was a porta potty somewhere like on the campsite. And for some reason as a kid, you're like, oh, porta potty, you look down in there, it's like, what the hell? Where is it?
Oh God.
Yeah, my glasses fell in there, bro. It sucked. Yeah.
Were you able to get them back?
No. Me and my family collectively were like, let's just go. That sucks, but let's just go. So I feel your pain. It's not quite not being able to see, but it's like not being connected. Like, I don't know. It's a similar pain. I can see it. So.
Okay, so we might be having the other guest. He's coming in late, it seems. But anyways, Publishers Weekly on like Monday put out the clickbaitiest article I had seen in a long time. Why don't straight men read novels? Which is, I think, a genuinely interesting problem as someone trying to sell books primarily to men, because I view myself as my ideal customer, basically.
Same.
And the fact of the matter is very accurately that men don't read.
Yeah. Unless it's comics, because that market's completely dominated by men reading it. So,
but who's reading comics? The industry is free fall. Indies are fighting for what's left, but it's a dying industry.
That's fair
for now.
And the East is drinking our milkshake in that regard. But this is about books, so yeah. I mean, like, yeah, I see what it's like. Men are reading, but like, are they? Yeah. Oh, hell.
Are they? What are you reading right now? Anything?
Me? Yeah. Well, right now I've been making my way. I've been busy moving, so I have like
audiobooks help with that.
Yes, I just read McCoppin's audiobook actually, Record of the Paladins. Nice. That was the most recent one. I've been thumbing through G. Sedai by Daniel P. Riley.
Man of the Indie Sphere.
Yeah.
I have been listening to Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth as narrated by Tim Curry.
Ooh.
It's actually been pretty good.
Yeah.
Hello, Authors Play. Thank you for joining late.
I'm fashionably late to make my grand entrance, please. Have you, speaking of... Actually, I have been reading The History of the Runestaff by Michael Moorcock because someone told me that Games Workshop ripped it off wholesale to get the feel for the Imperium of Man in Warhammer 40k.
Bro.
I can kind of see where they
Yeah.
stole a thing or two. It's not as blatant as they made it out to be, but you can definitely see things like the King Emperor of Britannia on his throne globe needing to be fed with souls to sustain himself. Kind of seems similar.
A lot of people ripped off Moorcock. That dude is taking it in stride. You know what I mean? Like, he's getting it from all angles. Like, everybody ripped him off. It's crazy.
Given how much he produces and the fact that he keeps going no matter what, I honestly think the dude is just in it for love of the game, and fucking props to him for that. Even though he should be like a multimillionaire for all the stuff he's given us.
I did enjoy having Moorcock as a selection for the book club, which, by the way, all of you listening, you can join the book club. We're now on Discord because it stopped. There no longer was a point to Gilded. Yeah, we're going to be streaming The Longest Day, a discussion on the book. I'm not going to pirate the movie for you. Sorry.
Damn it.
And
I was going to say that.
And I have to pick a new book for August. I might be revisiting a book that I think was really good when I was like earlier in my reading career, and I want to go back and see if it actually was really good.
Clifford's Big Adventure. Does it hold up?
Now that would be a lot right there.
The Inheritance Cycle, the next step up.
No, I know that was bad.
What, you don't like 16-year-olds writing books?
And getting published because their dad owns the company?
Yeah.
No, hold on. It's not hard to make a publishing company. You just register as one.
Well, then make one. Craig, publish all of us. What are you doing?
What? Yeah, for real.
We're not in that discussion because we don't have time. We have a hard 1 hour time limit. The reason I led with story time about my broken phone is because at 7 o'clock, hopefully, fingers crossed, a mailman is going to deliver me salvation and give me a replacement phone. And I will need to sign for that. And that means like not being live streaming. Also, Pritchard has to go to another stream and we will direct you there when the time comes.
Yes, sir.
Oh, look at you. Streaming all over the place. Yeah. The popular man.
I got 3 today.
A crowdfunder. Yeah. He's on the grind.
Yeah.
Which you should be on Author's Play. Go finish something.
I'm giving it all I got, cutting. You can't take much more of this.
All right. So one of the great reasons to bring on Author's Play is because he's like the quintessential example of the primary reason men don't read.
Thanks, I'll get to that. I guess.
The secondary reason, before getting into the article, is I am in the camp that schools beat the love of reading out of children. I think it is basically that simple. They force children on a schedule to read books they aren't interested in.
Bro, yeah.
Often for political reasons. I would say the majority of books I was forced to read in public education were to jam down a political ideology through my throat.
That's true. Rarely you do get educational ones like what, because like the most dangerous game, right? That's like classic American literature.
I didn't get to read that, although I did have a class that assigned The Hobbit, so that was nice.
Oh man, yeah, cool. Same here. The Hobbit was it's my favorite. It's one of my favorite books. I love that.
Those exist. Real teachers do exist, but most of it, like 80-90%, yeah, dude.
Okay. So the other reason is kind of what the article is about, because this clickbaity article of why don't straight men read novels has a point, whether you like it or not, for a type of person. Hello, Bat Sauce. Hello, Evelyn. Hello, the great indoors. So I'm just going to read this real fast. No, I'm not streaming my screen. Sue me. Alex, 24, thinks reading for pleasure is a waste of time. Instead, he reads to learn about current affairs, maths, and black history. Similarly, Finn, 24, has only read one fictional book outside of his childhood. I don't really find the time to read, but if I do, it's usually nonfiction, he says. Alex and Finn both feel compelled to make good use of their time. Good being a capitalist innuendo for productive. In our increasingly time-poor, grind-obsessed hellscape, 7 to 9 gym, 9 to 5 work, and 5 to 9 side hustle, coming up for air between a cog and a curling up with a novel just because you want to is a borderline sensual pleasure. Our culture makes a fetish of practical outcomes, and perhaps because the outcomes of fiction reading don't patently lead to higher wages, it seems less worthy, says Suzanne Keene, professor of English at Scripps College. I don't know about you, but I've never heard of Scripps College before in my life.
Nope.
Generally speaking, reading is an indulgence that women permit themselves more than men. In 2022, Deloitte predicted boys and men would continue to spend less time reading books and read them less frequently than women and girls. They were right. In 2023, women made up 80% of the book buying market in the UK, US, and Canada. I think that largely is because of the rate that you can go through books for women.
Yeah.
That's my personal take.
And there's also like, books like the Paris Hilton memoir and stuff like that. There's a lot of things that people don't take into account. So
there's a
when
Hilton
a
memoir.
guy joins a base book
What do they
club
call it? Oh my God, Becky, look at her butt. It is so big.
Close. I think it's just Paris.
Ah,
Yeah.
I know French people that would be enraged by that title.
Yeah.
So I think anyone who talks to people who read know that when you do find a guy that reads, he like picks up, say, epic fantasy, going through the Wheel of Time series, and it's just like, okay, so if you just look at the numbers there, reading one book of the Wheel of Time series is like a 3-week commitment, even for an avid reader.
Yeah.
So that means they read one book in 3 weeks. If you pick up a Colleen Hoover book, it's done in like 2 days, and you can buy another book.
So are you telling us that we need to return to the days of Lovecraft and Conan where like all the books were...
we are.
If you've noticed, because you've been buying books from my book club like I have been doing, if you buy, say, Solomon Kane, you get the complete collection as one book purchase. When it has 400 some pages with like 13 stories in them.
So are we doing
much more time.
The Gimli argument of it's still only one?
Yes, literally. So I'm just saying, when you look at these statistics, they are misleading because they are measuring basically the number of covers you've bought, not the amount that you've read.
Exactly. And on top of that, there's some revealing language in there too when they kind of have a negative negative opinion towards like capitalism right off the bat. It's like I thought we were talking about books, you know what I mean? Let
me drop some ancient lore on you two. Have you ever read Edmund Spenser's The Fairy Queen?
I have not. You are consistently a wealth of obscure recommendations that no one else has heard of.
Well, thanks, I guess. I'm turning into the sage character, I guess. I'll get a massively hooded robe and an orb to ponder at some point. But it's a work of English literature, considered a classic. Well, it is a classic. It's been in the Western canon for quite some time. It has a handful of passages that stick with me to this day, and one of them is there is a character of a friar who has a Bible, quote, well thumbed but never read. And that attitude towards reading has been recurring in reality every time I look at people who claim to, well, no, most times I look at people I claim to read, obviously present company excluded, gentlemen, but there are a large amounts of people who buy the books, read a couple pages, and then put them on a bookshelf because it looks nice and it makes them seem cultured. And I wonder how many, exactly.
You can see that in a lot of the, I'll just call them the feminized book covers, the ones that are, I mean, I guess you can see it in like the George Martin book covers too, right? Where it's just like a decoration on the bookshelf, right? It's just like there's not. It's not like a
have you heard my conspiracy about book covers?
No, lay it on us.
They're camouflage.
It's relevant. It's very relevant, right?
They all hide hidden cameras.
quite a bit, actually. I think that the big publishing houses pushed unidentifiable covers is so that the smut books they're selling to women look just like any other book, and they can read them in public because they realized that women were reading 50 Shades of Grey like on the bus, and that was a thing.
So you're telling me they're responsible for Fabio being out of a job?
No, Fabio's rolling in the dough.
Bernie oil painter and the romance cover art industry is a tragedy.
They're reading about Fabio more than ever right now, brother.
Well, yeah, but he's no longer getting paid to be on
That's
the front of the cover.
Yeah.
And just as a note before I forget it, on the topic of buying books that you never read, it kind of makes me wonder, is it the equivalent of when you buy like 8 million RPG source books for tabletop and you run like one campaign every 5 years?
Yeah.
Most of them just sit there.
Hoarding source books is even more painful.
Yeah, where's the source book and the adventure book numbers on this article? That's what I want to know. Where are those numbers?
Oh, those aren't real books. We only counted certain
Hmm.
authors. Completely unbiased research here.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, I have a whole one entire like shelf on my bookshelf is just nothing but adventures. And I know I'm not going to play all those adventures, but you know what? They're freaking stories. And you know what? There's like anthological adventures too, where it comes with like 5 of them, and those are short stories. It's fucking awesome.
You know,
dude.
sir, I hope that you do play those adventures.
I hope I do too. And I'm going to play one of them on stream. Everybody already said yeah. So I just got to make a spirit animals campaign.
And if you want to use these source books, let's talk about our sponsor, Roll20.
Roll20.
Roll20. If you want to sponsor me, I will start streaming games.
Yeah.
Oh,
World Anvil, brought to you by World Anvil as well. Yeah.
The Great Indoors says has issues with me recommending a book with fairy in the title. The book in question,
Dang a fairy.
the book in question is about a young man's quest to become the Red Cross Knight, which is the perfect knight. It's all about chivalry and valor and smiting evil and stuff. So despite the somewhat odd title, it is actually quite good. So I would stand by my recommendation. All right, we can continue.
All right, if we have bonus time at the end, remind me of the fairy joke. But okay. we have a task here. Women made up 80% of the book buying market in the UK, US, and Canada, and accounted for 65% of all fiction purchases in the UK, according to Nielsen book data. The bookish man is a rare species. Case in point, 1.2 million people follow the Hot Dudes Reading Instagram. I'm not on Instagram. Aww. I assume that has very little to do with the books.
I just took psychic damage from listening to you say, like, I believe it's real, but I didn't need to think about that.
And that's their source. They're like, this one Instagram.
You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of how the Acolyte ends with like the main episodes anyone's talking about is the fact that the Sith dude took his shirt off and they're like, oh my God, I turned to the dark side for him.
I didn't even know Acolyte ended.
It did, thankfully.
Yeah, everybody's like out of their misery
disconnect from Corpo Slot.
Well, yeah. I can sum up the Acolyte. It is a woman's romance novel in Star Wars that they made a show of.
But wrapped up in a disrespectful lore breaking, like, conglomeration, right? Like they do a lot of changes to the lore. In
perfect fairness, there's some issues that people were hawking about that honestly weren't that big, but there are other issues where you absolutely bad. But honestly, the thing for me is just that like they make the Jedi look like complete idiots. Like Red Letter Media had a good comment on it when they did their full series review the other day, and that was when they after they'd finished watching the whole thing, they compared it to the prequels. And in the prequels, the Jedi were not like incompetent or malicious. They were just effectively oblivious because they had normalcy bias. It's like, oh, nothing's going to happen. It's been peaceful for 1,000 years. We're doing our job. Everything's fine, which is understandable and much more forgivable than which is as eloquent as I can make the attitude of the Jedi in the Acolyte.
Okay, so anyways. Meanwhile, masculinity continues to be in crisis. Men between the ages of 18 and 34 feel the most pressure of any generation to conform to masculine behaviors. In the absence of a positive blueprint of how to exist in the post-Me Too world, a community of podcasting manfluencers, including ex-Navy SEALs Jocko Willink and David Goggins and neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman, have rushed in to promote their idea of what masculinity should look like. Self-improvement, ambition, and growth mindsets are the banner messaging of this male-coded media world where Andrew Tate reigns. I hate that Andrew Tate is in line with those four, that there's no overlap there. Reigns supreme, and the aim of the game is to optimize every waking moment to become a financially successful Sigma. Doubtless, many men enjoy the fact that reading nonfiction gives them an excuse to peacock their newfound knowledge and mansplain their late
I'm sorry. Did they actually use the term mansplain?
Yep,
Yes.
that's
This
another
article?
telling tone.
Oh my god!
It's like I just
Yep.
bit into an unexpectedly spicy food.
Right. and you maybe got the hint that this food could have been spicy, but you're still going to try it from that first slip up with the capitalism thing, and then it's like, nope, it's spicy. Fuck, it's spicy.
I'm still getting over the idea of Andrew Tate's book club, where he just like stands there and like he holds up nothing, then says "reading is for losers" and walks off stage.
Yeah, and that's they obviously go to like the extremes with like the Tate crowd and stuff like that, because that dude is famous for having like you can cherry pick really bad things and really good things. So this is why he's becoming so popular, is because a lot of people gravitate towards the good, and then a lot of people fixate on the bad and stuff like that.
Well,
So like
the thing that bugs me is Dr. Andrew Huberman is just a health guy.
Right. And the others are like ex-military dudes or whatever that are just motivational speakers. It's like, come on, what are you doing? You know?
Well, don't you know that being healthy is misogynistic?
Yeah, it's for the patriarchy. That's what I heard.
It's a right-wing dog whistle, I hear.
Yep. And oh my god, this is so relevant. We could go into politics if you guys would like, but
I don't want to. I'm trying to escape.
Yes, we gotta stick to the article. But yeah, it's fair to point the stuff out when we see it, though. You know.
To mansplain their latest read to their next hinge date, too. Bonus points if it's capitalist realism. I don't know what that is. Can someone Google what capitalist realism is?
Is that like magic realism, but with money instead? Where it's like, if I had all of this money, this is how I would.
No, it's italics. It has to be a title.
I think it's capitalism without morals, because if you're being realistic about something that supersedes morality, right?
So is that like Kissinger's Realpolitik, where it's just like get paid, fuck civilian casualties?
Essentially, yeah.
I hate this earth. I hate it.
Yeah. But
this idea of the hyper-capitalist man with no time for something as pointless as reading began to take root in the Victorian era. In the 19th century, reading novels developed a reputation as a frivolous and feminized activity, as bourgeois women imprisoned in the private sphere took up reading bodice-ripping paperbacks as a pastime. Conversely, serious men of the public sphere incubated capitalist messaging. Any interest in reading had to be justified by practical utility. While for most of British history, men's literacy rates far outstripped women's, by 1900, literacy was actually more diffused among women. As author Leah Price put in her book, How to Do Things with Nooks in the Victorian Britain, once a sign of economic power, reading is now the province of those whose time lacks market value. It is a cultural hangover that persists. A cult of productivity is still imposed more on men than women, says Dr. Alistair Brown, assistant professor of digital. This person's title is an entire line.
Oh, yeah. God.
Dr. Alistair Brown, assistant professor of digital humanities and modern literature at Durham University. Nonfiction seems to have more immediate and meaningful returns on the investment of time. Consequently, men buy more. In 2023, men accounted for 55% of nonfiction book sales, Nielsen book data tells Dazed.
What, you have time to read? What a loser.
Today's problem also has its roots in the gender encampments of childhood. Boys are less likely to have male reading role models and are generally nudged by parents, teachers, and product marketers in the direction of other pastimes, particularly sports. By comparison, girls are encouraged to read and have a model of peer-to-peer engagement through their mums' book clubs. So naturally, girls spend more time reading and reading fiction than boys. This is as intersectional issues. Boys on free school meals read less than anyone else. By the way, hello everyone in the chat. I missed several of you. I'm sorry. By the time their tween years swing around, a line is firmly drawn. Chris, 21, who has recently completed his second. By the way, this is all about Zoomers.
Yeah.
And
they're not like they're not doing what they did at the beginning of the article, where they're like, according to the Nielsen data. Now they're just saying things at this point. So what they did is they softened up the dumb people early on to trust them, and then now they're just making wild claims, because I don't know if you guys noticed this earlier, but they assume that any male that wants to read is going to essentially mansplain the book that they're reading to their random dates or whatever. They just kind of assume that earlier on. And I will point out that the term bourgeois is like typically like a term that I believe is sourced from the French Revolution. It's a very left-wing revolutionary thing to say, Marxist, some would say, because of like it's the proletariat versus the bourgeoisie and all that. But that's again a whole nother thing. But this whole thing just stinks of charged. It has like a charged tone to it, I'll say. And I have to keep.
There is a point. There is a kernel of truth here. I will
Right.
draw that line of evidence at the end.
Yeah.
By the time their tween years swing around, a line is firmly drawn. Chris 21, who has recently completed his second fiction book in 10 years, said he stopped reading at the age of 11, despite previously being a fan of fantasy books because he had better things to do. Naturally, such a stereotype cannibalizes itself and ends up being reflected by the market. Young adult fiction is the near total domain of the teenage girl, including what is made, marketed, sold, and read. Thank you, Hunger Games. As we cut off the legs of future readers, our culture closes off opportunities for boys and men, says Professor Keen.
Well, what about boys to men?
Those are thetas. This person's name is K Theta Theta N.
All right, hang on. Do you have a link for this article? I'm going to start reading along. I got to see.
Yeah, I linked it to you before I asked if you were free.
We could share without copyright, right? You could share your window.
Yeah,
right?
but like that would require screen sharing, and that's a technology beyond me.
Okay, all right.
Who is also an expert in narrative empathy. Consciously or not, we promote a model of masculinity that is less introspective, less attuned to others, and less contemplative. And they named like the 3.5, let's say, of the manfluencers they named are all promote meditation. Yeah. Real critical thinking skills here.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a Andrew Tate tweet. Reading books is for losers who are afraid to learn from life. So they try and learn from the life others have lived.
Holy
shit! You never really learn unless you lived it. You must feel it to believe it. Books are a total waste of time. Education for cowards.
Wow.
I called it. I totally said he'd say reading is for losers.
You did. And
I'm gonna go buy 500 lottery tickets now.
This is like quoting Hulk Hogan, by the way, because Tate's thing is very performative. But
how was my impression? I think I've heard Tate speak twice.
I think that was pretty good. That was pretty close. And I have to point out that the dude's a Muslim who believes in like having 5 wives or something. So it's like,
oh, I thought you were gonna say human trafficking.
Well,
I thought he believed in having 5 knives.
That's where they get into that. Anyway, the whole thing is like he's not exactly like if we're gonna look at like a core like Western person to like idealize or have like an archetypal person, like any of those other names on that list that they said up to Tate would have probably been slightly better examples to cherry pick stuff.
So we can talk about Andrew Tate. That is a full stream unto itself to discuss the appeal of the. I think Andrew Tate's an idiot. However, he has the Nietzschean spirit.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's being generous. All right.
No,
he certainly projects it at least.
Yeah.
And when there is so little competition in that domain of heroics, the performative guy wins.
Yep.
Look, James, man is a rope tied between beast and overman, and Andrew Tate is a tool held on that rope.
That's a great way to put it too.
Thank you.
I understand why you're here, Authors Play. I get it now.
My sparkling wit.
This all makes sense.
One day it'll be because I have a book done. One day.
Could reading stories offer an alternative route through the masculinity crisis by creating a safe space for allowing oneself to feel with no strings attached? Professor Theta suggests that reading fiction... By the way, that's probably a totally legit Greek name or something. I just don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
Is the diametric opposite of the stale stoicism of the manosphere. It is a form of immersion therapy that demands you be present and forget yourself to a meditative end. You also become part of a community, which helps you build mental companions as a bulwark against loneliness. Ah, yes, lonely? Read a book.
I mean, I hate to say it, that actually, yeah, If you're young and you're lonely, you read a book, you imagine yourself hanging out with all these fictional characters that aren't real. Yeah, that's a thing that happens. Hate to say.
Yeah.
If men read, it helps society at large. Reading fiction opens your eyes to uncomfortable truths and unexpected perspectives that you may otherwise not have sought out. Books can surprise you by smuggling in knowledge through the back door of an enjoyable and engaging story, increasing the possibility of critical thinking when encountering the topic again, according to Dr. Brown. When you read, you practice perspective taking, adopting the inner lives of characters as your own and walking around in their shoes, something there isn't time for with the visual immediacy of other media like film. Reading fiction ultimately leaves you feeling full up, a stark contrast to self-improvement imperatives that demand you be more than you already are. Carving out time for such creative pursuit refreshes the spirit and expands our sense of possibilities, says Professor Theta. And in case it isn't obvious, this is valuable use of time for men too. Men are not inert vessels for potential economic capital that needs to be squeezed out. So instead of retreating further into the hollow temple of productivity, might we suggest a prescribed course of Fourth Wing for all?
Yeah, don't you love Fourth Wing? Didn't you love that book, James? Didn't you read it recently? Wasn't it awesome?
I did read it recently. I said it was fine entertainment. Like it is of a quality that justifies its popularity.
So this was just a Fourth Wing advertisement?
Essentially.
It's smash cut to that.
The kernel of truth that brings me back to Author's Play. The foreshadowing comes to fruition. Men don't read because they don't have time to read. But the thing is, they're portraying this as the gig economy is optional when the gig economy is not optional. We don't have the leisure time because nobody is making enough money to cover rent, food, etc.
Yeah. And then there's the destruction of male literature, essentially. Like one of the things I appreciated about John Douglas's video when I watched it earlier is he walked through a store and he literally brought the receipts and showed, here's what all the sections look like. And I think a lot of it is tied together too, because of like, there's not only what the agents are looking for, which is a lot of like the political things that are being discussed these days, so that gets injected into the literature, but then
they put that in there. Stories are a good way to inject perspectives that you should consider.
There's also the destruction of other classic male literature, though, like all the Star Wars books. John pointed that out. There was a whole wall of Star Wars books. No dudes want to check that out anymore. Well, they're not canon anymore. Yeah, and we were just talking about the Acolyte and shitting on it. Like, dude, that's proof. And that's what percentage of the male sphere does just Star Wars take up for young men? You know what I mean? And
not
that's
much
just
anymore.
Not anymore. No. So like, this is what I'm saying is like, it all kind of ties together, like with certain other things. So
yeah. So the thing is that if you go to like a more fundamental analysis of like what is the good life, because the paperback I'm reading right now might be influencing me because I'm reading Aristotle's Politics right now. Like the true manfluencer I am in my heart. If you don't have time for leisure, you don't have time for a good life. And a lot of people don't have the time for leisure. They spend 16 hours a day working, either for pay or to take care of their life.
Well, I mean, aren't you being really entitled thinking that you should have time for other things when the average person should just be glad and feel fulfilled and entitled they get to serve the better humanity that, walks among us.
So there is an inherent point of analysis in Aristotle that if you reverse it, you can say that if the citizen is not able to live a good life, the government is at fault. Because the point of the government, the point of political association, is to facilitate the people within it living good lives. And good lives includes leisure, family, purpose, responsibility, etc. And if you aren't getting those things, the political association governing you is the one at fault.
James, do you want me to make a wacko out there comparison based on what you just said?
Go for it.
What you just said reminds me of the South Park Call of Cthulhu trilogy episode they did, where at the end, Cartman is defending his use of Cthulhu as, I'm making the world a better place. And Kyle says, you're making it a better place for you, just for you. Everything you've done has just made the world better for you. And Cartman looks at him and goes, well, yeah, what are you talking about? I don't understand. And that's the sort of mentality
Yeah.
I imagine half of the people running the show have.
Yeah. It's a power grab. Yeah.
So Emily here brings up a I don't know, an element of this whole thing, because I can blame the absolute decrease in leisure time for the reason people are reading less, but there's just such compelling alternatives to reading.
Yeah.
With the rise of video games, I hate sports, but you know, sports were a thing that came about 60 years ago, roughly, into public entertainment.
Yeah, not to mention alternatives to traditional book buying, such as web novels, like this
Yeah.
magnificent Undying Emperor that I've been getting into.
Oh, you've been getting into it, actually.
Yeah, men are also like just biologically more visual. Like,
Sure.
It's just a fact. Yeah, like women are more emotional, so therefore might gravitate to something like a romantasy novel, where men think that kind of stuff is cool, and there are a bunch that like read and stuff, as like the chat and all of us here and all the videos being made can attest to with this clickbait
I think men are also more attracted to action.
Yeah.
And choreographing an action scene is orders of magnitude easier for the same amount of engagement in a visual medium compared to text. Text doesn't do fights well. You can say, oh, but I love Robert E. Howard's fight scenes that take 2 paragraphs. And yes, I do like them, but they simply are not as good as even Schwarzenegger hamming it up on the screen.
Yeah. And this also accounts for the readership numbers in comics. So, I mean, comics are visual.
Yeah,
so
comics have a huge advantage over prose.
Yeah.
Obviously not as big of an advantage as animation does. But like the thing, a lot of the things that guys typically go for are outcompeted.
Yeah,
I also want to throw in here that this article talks about how books can broaden your life by giving you other experiences, and it's just like, yes, books are capable of doing that, but everyone here damn well knows that is not what's being read.
Yep.
Notes from Underground can make you re-examine your own life. Fourth Wing will not.
Right. And that's the book that's even the book that they pitched, you know, it's like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Fourth Wing is just, oh, what if I replaced the Air Force, pilot academy with dragons and threw in slightly more sex?
You know, it kind of makes me wonder the fact that Fourth Wing was the book they chose for this.
Yeah.
And
Trendy.
it's like, not yet. Well, yeah, that's exactly it. It kind of reminded me of trying to find comp titles for things that I'm querying. It's, no, yeah, that expression says it all, James. Oh, it's got to be recent, but not too recent. And it's got to be popular, but not too popular.
If anyone can find a comp title for Gamma Coin, good God, I'll send you a thank you copy.
Shadowrun Ragnarok. Except don't use that. Don't use that, because then they'll just drop the manuscript in the garbo.
And what I think this kind of attests to what we were saying earlier. Like, who was it? Somebody said, was it, can we go back to Conan and Lovecraft? Or what was that comment? I can't remember what it was.
I said it. I said, are you saying we should return to the days of Conan and Lovecraft, where all the stories are super short and they're novellas instead of novels?
Yes, and I think that's the direction decentralization is going to go. It goes by, it's going by a lot of names. I'm just calling it like decentralization, Iron Age, whatever you want to call it. This
beast
movement
has many names.
yes, but I think that's where it's going to go. Is you're going to need to have something quick and digestible for the TikTok generation to get in and out, and if they want to geek out about it, they can get the novel or whatever. So.
You know what? The sad thing is, I think you're right. And I say it's a sad thing because I tend to prefer more longer form things. I like it. Yeah, I like it. I think the best compromise might be where it's... Have you ever read the old Star Wars Expanded Universe anthologies?
Not the anthologies, no.
So you can make an argument as to whether they're good or bad, but the principle behind them is that they're all these side stories, in the greater universe that sometimes touch on the events you've already seen. So for those who like the long form stuff, it's like a look behind the curtain, or expanded. And for those who just want a quick in and out adventure, then that's what you get for short story.
I'm sorry. A what adventure?
A quick in and out adventure, Morty. 20 minutes.
Quick
No
in
more.
and out, quick in and out. And that's why I wrote my anthology, bro. It's I'm expanding my world very quickly. I'm like, here, let's develop this thing. Like, let's be efficient. None of this. I'm gonna spend my whole life doing this grand arcing one story, all my eggs in one basket, and then like not even finish my story like Robert Jordan or George Martin or whatever. Like, I understand the appeal of that. I do. It's cool, but I'm gonna temper myself a little
You
bit.
mean you haven't made 3 independent languages for your fictional world?
No, no, I haven't.
Written an extremely dry add-on book that goes into the mythology
Instead of finishing it, yeah.
Dude, I almost made a full conlang once.
I
I like made all the rules of how I was stealing words from other languages.
We all think about it.
I got almost to a functional level with the vocabulary, and I was just like, this is completely worthless.
Yeah.
I am way too lazy to ever make my own language.
It's so cool. That's why we all think about doing it, and we tinker with it. I do something a little different. I derive all my names and stuff from real world other languages, because like other languages are pretty wild anyway. You know what I mean? And you can just change it slightly. It sounds alien enough. It sounds fantasy. It means something now.
George R. R. Martin strategy. Sarah.
Is that what he does? Is that what he does?
Yeah. Basically, all of his names are just misspellings.
Oh, okay. I'm not gonna No. I'm not gonna be like star named and like and like spell it weird. It's more like star in like German, and then I take 2 of the letters out, and it says the translation says something different. So it's like it looks like that word, and I can still technically say it means that and stuff like that.
To make my language,
cool.
I've made an unholy fusion of the most 2 diametrically opposed languages on the world: French and German.
Yeah, French and German.
The languages inherently hate each other. Look at them go.
Look at them go. Yeah.
So the problem with going, I'll return to tradition with a V, and trying to go to short stories is the conversion rate from them liking one short story you put out to getting them to try another is painfully low. Because like if you are, say, writing an epic fantasy web novel available for free, once they've gotten through 2 books, you have them for the rest of the series.
Yeah, it's
because you're just giving them more of the same. They know what they're getting. They know that they like what they're getting, and they will stick around.
Oh, you're talking about Akaso.
You mean the guy who got published and is having an audiobook come out?
Yeah, but I just wanted to razz you. Anyway,
all right. Secondary argument here. I'm sure you guys have encountered audiobooks aren't real reading.
Yeah.
I hate to say it. Okay, so there is partially an argument to be had. I would argue that it's mostly nonsense, because you get the meat and bones of the story. You hear the words. You're done correctly. You're taken away to the fictional world, and you do the story and whatnot. There is one, however, point they've got, and that is if you are reading listening to the story to kind of either crib notes or to kind of drill into your brain how good stories are written, it does not function as well, because your brain doesn't make the same connections like that it will if you actually look at the words on the page. I'm not quite sure how to describe it. It's almost like I'm bad with using words or something.
The neural
so because you're cutting out a part of your brain that handles symbolic interpretation from visual data to meaning, you are analyzing the story at a slightly shallower level or less intensive level, and you get those kinds of effects. However, audiobooks reclaim time. And I point out, almost everyone has commute time every day that they could just turn on an audiobook.
Yeah.
And the fact that people discourage audiobooks as not real reading is insanity to me.
I will concede the neurochemistry thing, because there is like an eye brain connection and synchronicity going on when you're physically reading it, but as like longtime musician and stuff, when I wrote like my discography, a lot of times I'm listening to other songs, and when I was full on into that, like that was the main thing I consumed was music, and I would I would have to look up the words of every song that resonated with me and stuff like that. There's certain bands that just had better lyrics, and I was trying to figure out why it's better and stuff, and my vocabulary expanded like that and all kinds of stuff. But I do have to acknowledge the brain eye connection and synchronicity that has to be involved from physically reading it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a thing, but it's still reading, in my opinion.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the last point I think we have time to get into before giving you a moment to pitch, Richard, is I think podcasts actually have cannibalized the reading market. So many people put so many hours every week into listening to podcasts like this, which, by the way, you should hit like and subscribe.
Yeah.
And then you should like leave the stream on, walk away and read a book, such as Low-Key Connections.
If you can pull off listening while reading.
Oh my god, impossible.
Words jumble me. I can listen to instrumental music, but
the stories just start to bleed together.
Yeah.
If people switched even a bit of their podcast time to audiobooks, we would like double the amount of reading in America overnight.
Well, yeah. I have to point out that it's not just cannibalizing the audience, it's replicating it for some podcasts. I've seen multiple podcasts that are growing and appear to be thriving even, which boil down to, this is a story I'm telling while there's some music and some art popping up on the YouTube channel. And they, in the last year or two, they're going gangbusters. I mean, you have like nonfiction ones or quasi nonfiction ones, like, the spooky stories, like bedtime stories and whatnot, where it's like, tales of Bigfoot that maybe happened or maybe they didn't. But I've also seen I've also just seen straight up fictional stories. Not just creepypastas either, but just straight up fictional stories. And the author throws down some pictures, and then at the end of it, it's just there. It's a story, or even a chapter of a story. It's like basically hitting the podcast audience with the format of a web novel, and it's getting there.
Yeah. Shout outs to JVP Music. He does Ruthless. It's a visual. It's like a visual.
Is this
comic.
episode 2 out?
I think it is. Yeah. I think. But yeah. He does like a visual thing like that too. I see a bunch of people on TikTok.
An audio comic.
Yeah, this is going to be a thing. This is for sure going to be a thing. Think about War of the Worlds originally being broadcast on the radio, right? It's just going to be a thing for sure. Why couldn't people do live reads? Like, let's get a script, get some people together, and do like an episode of something, right? If you just need
like, work.
Yeah, like you could pull it off. It'd be cool.
Great indoors audio.
Given how popular live plays of D&D and stuff are, you'd think actually just scripting a proper story with someone who knows how to script a story would be better.
Yeah.
Well, in fairness, the popularity of D&D sessions has effectively gone down quite a bit since the novelty have worn off.
And since the pandemic,
COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that's when I was watching a lot of it, was working in a warehouse during the lockdowns. So,
all right. Well, there is a side effect of podcasts though, because the David Goggins of the world and the interviewers, your Lex Fridmans, your Diary of a CEO, your insert name here.
Hang on for 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. My cat jumped on the computer and almost stepped on the power button. All right, we're good.
We would have missed you.
Yeah, you'll get that.
They do recommend books, often nonfiction books. Like I've picked up, Joe Rogan has sold me multiple books. Yeah, and I think that works for a lot of people. I think you can get a lot of book sales by going on Joe Rogan, like beyond the mere effect of 10 million people hearing about it. And this pulls back to the fact that the comment in the article of women get into reading because they have their mom's book club to pull them in, whereas there really aren't male book clubs except mine. I think humans have a innate desire to consume what their peers are consuming.
That's true.
I think it's more along the lines of you feel almost required to consume what your peers are consuming so you can talk with them about it and interact socially.
Yes. No, exactly.
The Game of Thrones effect. A lot of people
Well-
watch that just because their friends were. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
just one
In
example.
defense of GOT, the first 5 seasons were fantastic.
I'll agree with that. I mean, and that's even knowing that they were drifting away from the books at the time, because it was more forgivable at the time, as long as
Yep.
you don't completely mess it up. And things were changed already. People forgave it. As long just keep this quality coming, guys. Keep the good writing coming, and then no, and then no.
George R.R. Martin sits on his throne of lemony tarts.
Yes.
The corollary to this whole people want to consume what their peers are consuming is why I don't think AI generated books are going to be a problem. Because once AI tools get strong, we're going to like pass through this phase of like, oh, a writer can use AI to make books very quickly. And it's going to hit the phase of the consumer can ask for the book they want and the AI will make it for them.
Yeah.
but
And
it
once
sucks
that
most of the
threshold
time.
is hit, only the people interested in custom stories are going to use AI stories, because like, why would you read somebody else's wish fulfillment when you could just get your own? And then everyone's going to
Yeah.
read their own Gen I creation, and there's going to be no touchstone except when there is that fundamental human element tying it back. So I'm not worried about generative AI for
Yeah.
that exact reason.
As Iron Age Media Nikki Picone says, it will be humans will become boutique, like in the same way like a lot of boutique things are. You know, like not everybody. There's like electric cars exist. There's always going to be gas cars. That's like my point. Like the calculator was invented. People still do math and stuff on a chalkboard. Like there's things that just will always be here because of humans. You know,
There will
it'll just make
always be gas cars, he said, hopefully.
well somewhere.
As the shadow of Gavin Newsom raises over him.
But yeah, like it'll just make the value go up of humans, and
Yep.
those who are true writers will rise. So
Yeah,
Well,
so
there you
I
go,
encourage
James.
all you straight men novel readers to tell your friends that you read, but like, don't be a twat about it.
yeah,
Show up to, hello, all you people. I just want you to know that I'm a reader.
you
Yeah,
just start.
What have
it's,
you
don't treat it
read
as a
lately?
status flex. Like,
I'm straight and I read.
There you go, James. You got your new merch idea. Just make a T-shirt. I'm straight and I read, and then
Yep.
like have the Chad face.
No,
I'm
I
not
got
doing
I got
merch
one
until
better.
I get 1,000 subscribers, so you got to help me get those numbers up.
This one goes to the Take
Pump those
crowd.
numbers.
This one goes to the Take crowd, who famously really care about like working out and getting women and stuff. You can show them this article and you can say, I'm straight and I read. And look, this article says right here that I am a rare species. You see this right here? It says I'm rare.
I'm a
Yeah, I'm
catch,
gonna print this
ladies.
out on my match day and be like, check it out, I'm rare.
Yeah.
I'm a shiny crake.
Shiny Craig. Yeah.
All right, we're in the last few minutes before we have a stop. I've spoken about my books. I've name dropped my books anyways. I am not the only creator on this stream. We have a live crowdfunding on Fund My Comics right now. The link has been on your screen this entire time. It's also in the description. What is your elevator pitch? You have a few minutes.
Well, I from the world of my full-length novel. It's an unforgiving traditional fantasy world with all the fun trimmings that you like, except with some Lovecraft mixed in it. I got one of my short stories. It's my orc story. That's what I call it. It's the short story I wrote to like we were talking earlier about short stories expanding universes and stuff. I decided to just dive into an orc protagonist and kind of expand it. And I was really inspired by like the Kensington runestone story. For people those are familiar, there's a runestone found in Minnesota that has authentic Viking runes on it and stuff like that, and it has this whole story about how they something happened. I'll just say that. You can look into the story if you want. But just touring the Alexandria Museum, looking at that stuff and like the authentic Viking ships and stuff made me want to write a story about it. My Vikings are like savage, primitive humans that are more brutal, you know what I mean? And obviously bigger, like you imagine like where orcs have kind of gone since Tolkien. They're not soy orcs anymore.
Do they all make fun of the Skald for reading?
Yeah, all my orcs that read are gay.
Bjorn, look at this one. He sits and reads his scrolls instead of going out and slaying like the rest of us.
Yep. But yeah, I combine that idea of like Viking orcs with a flying longship, which is how I actually got to the Viking idea, because I was thinking, what are like really the only two ships that you could make into a realistic airship? Like with enough hydrogen, you could make a Viking longship float, right? Like you look at like modern Zeppelins and stuff. They're carrying like aluminum frames and stuff like that. I'm surely some of the right wood or bamboo or something would work, or like bones or whatever. But the other choice would have been like a Polynesian double canoe. I looked at the two civilizations that kind of got across the ocean without anything crazy. And yeah, it made me land on Vikings. They have a flying ship. They go to the new world, essentially. Like it's like an alien world to them, because my Vikings they're from like the Arctic polar regions. They're like very nomadic. My world's in a perpetual ice age that's freezing and thawing at the same time. So the orcs kind of, walk along that path. And yeah, they're able to fly to the more equator regions of the world. And it's like an alien world to them, because it's like subtropic. And you get these icy orcs that experience that, and it's all just to bring the king to his final resting place. He wants to die on his own terms. They all got their sons with them, because that's what like Vikings did, and bring my boy with me.
Bring your kid to work day.
Yep, exactly. So it's like this nice short story about that. They go there. My writing is very like I frame things in almost a biblical term, like in almost like flowery biblical terms. It helps me with like certain foreshadowing. I'm a vocalist. I'm a lyricist, musician. So like word choice is very important to me. And so it's all like framed in this context. There's even some like original lyrics in there. I have the bard singing the king's actual saga, and stuff like that. And it's fun. It's a good time. And more importantly, it's a chonker. It's going to be over 72 pages of lovely art from Luke Stone himself, the creator of Fun My Comic. Yeah, and
I have a Luke Stone piece.
Oh,
Listen.
Fun. No, he does great work, and did a fantastic job on this. I think he really like is picking up what I'm laying down here, and yeah, we just got 10% of our goal. Just another few $100 away from having all the variant covers being able to be made, which will be fantastic. I contacted a guest artist potentially, but we'll see where the road takes us with that. And yeah, I mean, like if we can knock this thing out, I have the proof of concept in Anvil magazine. There's like a 15-page preview there, so it's not like any question. It's just like the funding is all that's required, right? It's gonna get made regardless. This is like this is to speed
trying
it up
to not impoverish yourself.
Help it happen right now. Yeah. Because even getting to that phase in Anvil with the 15-page preview, that was all from the proceeds of the source material of my book on Amazon. And as we all know, you can publish on Amazon for free. So this book kind of brought itself into existence, used its own profit to get a 15-page preview. And then now I'm using that proof of concept to have a crowdfunding source. So essentially, like if this succeeds in like all from the crowdfunding, then it will have successfully made itself exist, if that makes sense. And I'm kind of stoked on that idea. I think it's a good path for indies to follow, reinvesting in yourself.
So you, sir, have my respect until my mic dies again, because you are one of the few, apparently, indie comic creators that is doing the writing to their comic, but they didn't start with comics. They started with writing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which means you can actually direct people back to your own credentials.
Yeah, it's important, and I mean, it allows me to speak on stuff like changing IP in like beloved things that we're seeing. Like I can speak to that a little bit because I've been forced to make certain cuts myself, so I know what you can actually cut and what really shouldn't be cut. Without going into any details, an egregious recent example is House of the Dragon. There's rumors that they're deleting an entire character, the only one to tame a wild dragon. I digress. That sounds important, right? It's because it is. And if you
Maybe.
delete that, if you just delete a whole character like that, it's like, I don't know. That's but like filler lines. Oh, totally get it. If you need to speed things up a little bit, like the travel log, like where it's just some pointless dialogue, maybe, like, yeah, sure, cut that little walking scene out or whatever. I can see that. But entire characters are a no without me going too far.
All right, so we are at the 1 hour mark. So whose stream are you jumping on here?
The Common Nerd, and they're probably starting right about now. So
all right, so viewers, if you want to follow him, you can go to the Common Nerd.
Common Nerd. I can.
I'm starting off to go transfer data between phones. Hopefully,
you're good. But yeah, thanks guys. Thanks guys. Go to fundmycomic.com/ASOS. It's right here on screen, and it was put in the chat earlier. Thanks for coming. Hop over onto the Common Nerd. I've been sharing it on my X, which is twitter.com/A_C_Pritchard. I'm going to hop right over there right now. I'll see you guys. Right. Thank you.
And book 3 of the Bastion Blackstone series is coming soon. I'm just waiting on cover art right now. But you can pick up Gamma Coin, a fantastic manhunt in the mega city of Bastion. Link in the description.
Cheers.
Thanks for tuning
in. Are we still going, or
it is buffering?
Ah.